Hey there, everybody, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host here at the Dark Stuff channel on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out my new video. You know, in today's video, I want to take you back in time. Back in time to February of 1983. I was 12 years old and my favorite band in the world was Styx. And for the first time in my young life since I became a fan, the band was about to release a new album. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember grabbing my bike as soon as school ended. I remember racing down the street to the record store to grab the album. Kilroy Was Here. Hell yeah, he was. And now he was heading straight back to my ago this week that Styx released its 11th album, Kilroy Was Here. And this turned out to be the album that broke up the arena rock juggernaut that had been Styx for the previous decade and a half. This album was a concept album with its own short film. However, after the release of the album and the tour, the band ended up breaking up, and that classic lineup of Dennis DeYoung, James Young, Tommy Shaw, John Panazzo, and Chuck Panazzo never actually played together on stage again. For this video, I wanted to dive back into Kilroy and see how it holds up 40 years later. Back then, the album had a major impact on me. I was so blown away by the whole concept and everything. I just thought it was like a major statement, like Pink Floyd The Wall or Tommy or by The Who or whatever. I absolutely loved it. And I saw the band twice on this tour. I mean, here's my tour book. It's in pieces because at the time I had cut it up to, hang up in my room. That's what kids did back in the 80s. In the 40 years since the release of Kilroy, I mean, I've heard a lot of different music, and my taste has really changed quite a bit in that time. I mean, after sort of moving on from Styx, I got more into heavy metal, and then I got into punk and alternative and indie music, and here we are 40 years later. I mean, I was only 12 years old in 1983. If you've listened to my radio show, New Day Rising, or seen any of my older videos, you've never, ever even seen a mention of Styx. Maybe like one in a video or something, but that's about it. And despite all the changes in my taste over the years, you know, if I'm out somewhere at a bar or in a store or something, and a Styx song comes on or on the radio, I always listen to it fondly. I mean, I do. I could act like I'm a hater, but I'm not. After that 1983 tour, the band released a live album. It was called Caught in the Act Live, you know, clever. And they put out the album and a home video, and I bought both. I bought the home video on Betamax. Yes, Betamax. We were that family. We were the ones that went for beta. I mean, because it was supposedly was better quality. At least that's what they said. And that's what my dad said and believed for the entirety of the decade of the 1980s. We were that family. Anyway, so the band broke up in 1984. So my change in taste or whatever never really affected Styx in any way, shape, or form. Okay, but back to the album itself. So, you know, Kilroy Was Here was a concept album. It was a concept album that was championed by singer-songwriter Dennis DeYoung, but in all candor, it was not really even understood, let alone supported by the other guys in the band.
A lot of conflict within the group over that concept because no one was sure what the concept was.
You know, despite being loathed by every rock critic with a pad and a pen and any kind of audience, Styx sold a boatload of records. The previous 4 albums before this one all went triple platinum. That's 3 million copies each. That's just in the United States. They were massive. When Styx put out a new album back in that era, it was a big deal. You know, until I saw the Styx episode of Behind the Music, which is something that anyone has to see. It's a must-see for any music fan or just fan of drama in general. Like, I didn't know how much tension there was in that band over direction. And the direction, I mean, it got so tense at one point that the band fired Dennis DeYoung in 1979.
The upshot of it was that I got fired from the band.
Upon Upon his return to the band, Dennis DeYoung took total control of the group, and despite the rest of the band not being really warm to the idea, Dennis told them that their 1983 album would be a concept album. There would be a film that goes along with it, and that the tour would actually be like a fully theatrical performance with like stage sets and dialogue and all of that, and it wasn't just going to be an ordinary rock concert. Now, to understand the context here in 1982-83, and there is context, you need to remember the satanic panic of the early 80s. Okay, so rock music has often been a target of conservative religious groups going back to its origins in the 1950s. They claimed it was, devil music and this and that. In the 1980s, though, the new angle was a lot of these groups were convinced that Satan was communicating with children through backward messages played on records.
Okay, I live with Satan, exactly. And then you'll hear there's power in Satan.
There's power in Satan.
And they singled out certain bands, the usual suspects like Ozzy and whatever, but Styx too.
So we're quite loosened up ourselves. And last year, state legislature of California was so loosened up that they decided that some records, including ours, had backwards satanic messages on them.
I mean, as silly as this stuff sounds today, it was real back then. Jerry Falwell of the Moral Majority, he had the ear of the president. He could go to the White House and talk to Ronald Reagan. Rock concerts had protesters outside. Every single concert I went to in the 80s, whether it was someone who was like heavy metal like Motley Crue or Kiss, or whether it was like Rick Springfield or Genesis, there were religious protesters handing out pamphlets and telling us we were going to hell every single time without fail. So the concept for the album, goes something like this. So rock music is banned by the government and forced underground. The Majority for Musical Morality, and obviously take on the Moral Majority, led by a guy named Dr. Everett Righteous. He is the preacher behind the movement. Kilroy himself was a famous rock star who was framed for murder and thrown in jail. They have a whole thing where he supposedly killed a guy on stage and, he was framed. The prison is guarded by these like futuristic Japanese robots, Mr. Robotos, not humans doing the job, because this is the job that nobody wants to. Prisoners are only allowed to eat fried chicken provided to them by Dr. Righteous. Everyone in the band became a character. So you had Dennis DeYoung was Robert Orrin Charles Kilroy. JY, or James Young, played Dr. Everett Righteous. Tommy Shaw was a guy named Jonathan Chance, who was like a rebel, underground rebel, rock guy. And the Panazzo brothers were the two henchmen for Dr. Righteous, because you can't be a bad guy without henchmen. But wait, there's more. So after Jonathan Chance pirated the government's TV signal and showed Kilroy, it inspired Kilroy to break out of prison. And what he did is he dressed up as one of the robots, the Robotos, put on the costume, and he agreed to meet up with Jonathan Chance at the Paradise Theater. I guess the two of them were going to bring music back. That's the gist of it, really. It does sort of seem a little silly 40 years later, but that satanic panic shit was real back then. There's also another element to the story, only explored partially, but that is about too strong reliance on technology, being overly reliant on technology.
Too much technology.
So let's go through the album track by track and see how the songs work, don't work, how they fit into the story, how they don't fit into the story, looking at it again 40 years later. All right, first song, side one, is Mr. Roboto. Now, sorry folks, this song is a stone cold classic. If you were expecting me to make a joke about it or bust on it, you are sorely mistaken. I say this 100% apologetically. It is an awesome song, not a guilty pleasure. It is great. This synth pop gem has actually become sort of a pop culture phenomenon in the time since it was released. It's been in dozens of like movies and TV shows and stuff. Even that great scene in Mr. Robot, the show Mr. Robot, and Anyways, you should look that up. Anyway, the song references most of the aspects of the story. It veers kind of wildly between Kilroy being like, I'm not the savior, and then the sort of the too much technology aspect with lines like, thank you very much, Mr. Roboto, for doing the jobs nobody wants to. So there's the sort of societal tie-in. All these years later, the song still sounds fresh, still sounds kind of futuristic even, and though the album is not about robots, okay, it really isn't. Because of the popularity of that song and the artwork on the album, I could understand how some people think that it might have been.
Just couldn't think of songs about robots.
Okay, next up on side one is a song called Cold War. It's a mid-tempo rocker from Tommy Shaw. As a kid, I used to really like this track, but this time, not so much, re-listening to it now. And while Mr. Roboto has kind of a timeless quality to it, this song sounds so rooted in the 80s, as does a lot of the rest of this record. The guitars are kind of muted. They don't really sound as hard rock as Styx guitar had sounded in the past. The guitar solo does retain some of that edge, though. That's about the only part of it that does. Lyrically, you could make an argument that this song fits into the story of the album. Tommy Shaw as Jonathan Chance is like warning society that there's going to be an upcoming battle between Dr. Righteous and the rebels like him. There's references to psychology, to mountains being brought down. The war is cold, but it is simmering. Okay, Don't Let It End was the second single from the album, and it is the next in the long line of Dennis DeYoung power ballads. It was a hit song, as most of Dennis's ballads were. I suppose you could say the song would tie into the greater Kilroy story if you just say, like, okay, Kilroy is writing this song, not Dennis. And Kilroy is writing this to his significant other on the outside. And he's saying, I'm begging you, don't let it end this way. He says, don't walk out that door. Now, what door exactly? The prison visiting area? I don't know. But maybe then it would sort of tie into the story. I never actually cared for this song. Next.
I flipped the switch on my laser video.
Okay, the last song on side one is called High Time. This one definitely fits the story. The lyrics are catered to fitting into that. There's references to breaking from prison, starting a revolution, breaking free from mind control, all of the key elements that Kilroy would be experiencing. Musically, though, the song is super weak, okay? It's like kind of an up-tempo pop song, but with horns. And the bow diddy bow is just corny, and I don't like that part. I never really cared much for this one. Again, decent guitar solo though.
Why don't you turn that music down?
So side two, first song is called Heavy Metal Poisoning, and it's not until side two that we get a contribution from James Young as Dr. Righteous. This is his first contribution to the record. And, of course, it starts with a backward message. Now, as is usually the case on Styx records, the James Young tracks are the harder rocking songs. In this case, this is like the only really rocking song on the entire album, if I'm being just completely candid here. I like this song. I think it's great. James Young fully embraces the character. He's fully into the Dr. Righteous thing, and he says lines like, everything is black and white, you are wrong and we are right, first we'll spank your big behinds, then we'll twist your little minds. Classic. The next song is called Just Get Through This Night. It's a 6-minute kind of ballad from Tommy Shaw. Honestly, for the life of me, I don't understand how it fits into the theme. It can in a way, but it also could have just been written about almost anything. At first it seems like it's Jonathan Chance kind of psyching himself up for some epic battle with the forces of Dr. Righteous. He envisions all of the things he could be doing in his life. He could be a novelist. He could be a movie star. If he could just get through this night. But then later there's the references to like the pain of a broken heart, and it just makes me think that this song was just written in some other context, and Tommy Shaw just said it was about Kilroy. Okay, Double Life is next, and it's the next song that James Young contributes to the album. And while Heavy Metal Poisoning definitely fit into the story of Kilroy Was Here, I don't really see how Double Life does at all. I mean, there's lines like, I'm schizophrenic and so am I. It's not always honesty that is the best policy. I mean, is he supposed to be saying that Dr. Righteous is sort of like conflicted about his status as like this demagogue, and he's really got this other side to him that he really doesn't think the way that he appears to on his broadcast? And is he in any way conflicted about being this morality crusader who burns records and all that? I mean, this aspect of the story is not explored in any way other than this particular song. Again, the song, James Young could have just written it about something else and made it say that it was about Kilroy. That's my theory. The next one, Haven't We Been Here Before? Valid question. Haven't we been here before? This is a ballad from Tommy Shaw. Again, kind of a power ballad, because there's a distinction between a ballad and a power ballad. This song is lame, sentimental sounding crap. Sorry, I used the C word. You know, maybe this song is meant inside of the story, mind you, to rally the troops before the battle. But honestly, I think I'm stretching it. I don't see how this has anything to do with it. And it's not even a great song, I mean, Tommy Shaw really didn't contribute that much to this particular record.
I really just kind of came up empty. I just couldn't think of songs about robots.
The album closes with the reprise of Don't Let It End, but it really doesn't sound anything like the ballad on side one. It starts off, and it's sort of like a musical throwback to Mr. Roboto, but done more guitar-oriented. Tommy Shaw takes the vocal as Jonathan Chance, and they alter the lyrics, and he says, I am the modern man, with this guitar in hand, I'll do my best and try to keep rock and roll alive. Whoa. The song then turns into more of a rocker with the whole band shouting, Don't Let It End, over and over, while Dennis DeYoung recites off the names of some of rock's foundation, the founding members, Elvis Presley, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, etc. I mean, it seems like it's supposed to be the climax to the album, to the show, to the video, and it kind of lands with a dud, in my opinion. So there you go. That's the record, track by track. Now, I did mention I saw Styx twice on this tour. The first time in Lincoln, Nebraska, a place called the Bob Devaney Center. I don't think it exists anymore. It was a reserved seat show. We got pretty decent seats. I think we were in like the 8th or 10th row. And that really worked. That was rare for 1983 in Nebraska, by the way, but that really worked for the theatrical aspects of the show, because when you're sitting there watching a movie, it's nice to have a reserved seat as opposed to the GA where you're standing. Later that year, I saw him in Omaha. It was a general admission show. And in that case, I did enjoy the show, definitely, but the theatrical stuff and the dialogue and all that just seemed really out of place. The people that were there, they just wanted to rock out.
When JY started the show with this guitar solo, the place went wild.
At the beginning of this video, I asked the question, how does it hold up? How does Kilroy Was Here hold up 40 years later? If I'm just being honest, it doesn't really hold up that well. Other Styx records absolutely do. Grand Illusion, Pieces of Eight, Equinox, Crystal Ball. I still have some love for all of those records. With Kilroy, though, if you remove Mr. Roboto and Heavy Metal Poisoning, you really have nothing, in my opinion. The rest of it falls completely flat. The story, even understanding the context, is still overly simplistic, kind of silly. I mean, Robert, Orrin, Charles, Kilroy, get out of here with that shit. And while I absolutely loved the two Styx shows that I saw in 1983, I rewatched Caught in the Act Live on YouTube, because I don't have a Betamax player anymore, and I was unimpressed. The weight of this album and the controlling nature of Dennis DeYoung did lead the band to break up after this album, and it's probably was for the best. A version of Styx reformed in 1990, minus Tommy Shaw, and they did a tour. I actually saw that version of the band live. I was in college by this point, but I came home for a break, and my mom had bought me Styx tickets to see the show. By 1990-91, you know, I had really moved on and I was into completely different music, but it was a nice gesture from Mom, so I went to the show anyways. I don't really have any recall of it, other than it was in a smaller place. It was at the music hall rather than the main Civic Auditorium, and so that was the only thing I really remembered. You know, by the time that the classic era of Styx was set to reunite in the mid-90s, it was too late because drummer John Panazzo died due to complications from alcoholism. So that Kilroy tour, as divisive and complicated and, you know, whatever as it was, that was the last time those five guys ever played together. A version of Styx still exists today. They still tour. They come to Nebraska every other year probably. But I actually have no idea who's in the band other than Tommy Shaw and JY. I did, while I was doing some research for this video, come across a video of Styx in 2023 performing Mr. Roboto. So even though they hated it and they have all these negative feelings about it, they obviously at some point warmed up to it and started incorporating it into the sets. All right, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Please leave your comments on this album. What do you think? Does it hold up? Are you still as big a fan as you were back then? And also, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Like this video. You know the drill. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.